Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and before we dive in, let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at pocket change forever. What if I told you that a simple penny, one that you might casually toss into a jar or hand over at a gas station without a second thought, could actually be worth $15 million? Yes, you heard that right, 15 million. Now, I know what you're thinking, that sounds absolutely impossible. How could something so common, so ordinary, something that literally millions of people handle every single day, possibly be worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime? Well, stick with me because the 1981 Lincoln penny we're about to explore isn't just any ordinary penny. It's a numismatic legend, a coin that has shattered records, stunned collectors, and proven once and for all that sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding in the most unexpected places. This particular penny has an estimated value that has reached as high as $15 million at specialized auctions and private sales, making it one of the most sought-after error coins in American history. And before we get too deep into this absolute goldmine of a coin, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't the only million-dollar penny we're covering today, because after we unpack every incredible detail about this 1981 treasure, we're going to reveal another penny from the mid-1980s that's worth millions as well. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around until the very end because that second coin has a story that's even more dramatic, even more unexpected, and the value? Well, let's just say it'll blow your mind, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me bring your attention back to this 1981 Lincoln penny, because this coin represents everything that makes coin collecting not just a hobby, but a true treasure hunt. Now, let's set the stage. 1981 was a fascinating year for American coinage. The country was in the midst of significant economic shifts. Inflation was a major concern. Interest rates were skyrocketing, and the United States Mint was working overtime to produce enough circulating coinage to meet the demands of a growing economy. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were churning out billions of pennies, and in that massive production run, something extraordinary happened. Something that would create one of the most valuable error coins ever discovered. The 1981 Lincoln penny in question is what's known in the numismatic community as a transitional error, specifically involving incorrect planchet composition. You see, in 1981, the standard Lincoln cent was supposed to be struck on a zinc core planchet with copper plating. This had been the composition since 1982 actually began the transition, but here's where it gets interesting. During the transition period between the old 95% copper composition and the new zinc core composition, several pennies were accidentally struck on wrong planchets. Some 1981 pennies were struck on planchets intended for 1982, while others were struck on leftover bronze planchets from previous years, and in extremely rare cases, some were struck on planchets intended for completely different denominations. The specific error that commands the $15 million price tag involves a 1981 penny struck on a silver dime planchet. Imagine that, a penny with the dies and design of a Lincoln cent but struck on the smaller, silver-colored planchet meant for a Roosevelt dime. This creates a coin that's visually stunning, immediately recognizable as an error, and extraordinarily rare because such mistakes required a perfect storm of circumstances at the mint. The wrong planchet had to make it past quality control, it had to be fed into the penny press instead of the dime press, and it had to survive striking without being caught and destroyed. The visual characteristics of this error are absolutely distinctive. The coin is noticeably smaller than a regular penny because dime planchets are smaller in diameter. The weight is significantly different, and the color has that silvery appearance rather than the copper red you'd expect from a penny. The striking is often weak on the edges because the dime planchet didn't completely fill the penny dies, and you can sometimes see what collectors call a misfit appearance where Lincoln's portrait or the memorial design appears compressed or incomplete on the edges. These visual markers make authentication relatively straightforward for experts, though I must warn you that counterfeits do exist because of the enormous value. So any potential discovery should always be authenticated by a reputable third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC. Now, let's talk about why this particular error is valued so incredibly high, reaching that stratospheric $15 million mark. The answer lies in a combination of factors that numismatists call the perfect storm of value. Extreme rarity, obvious visual appeal, historical significance, and market demand. First, the rarity factor is off the charts. Experts estimate that fewer than 5 examples of this specific error are known to exist in the entire world. Think about that for a moment. Only 5 coins out of the billions of pennies struck in 1981. That's a survival rate so low it makes winning the lottery look easy. Second, the visual appeal cannot be overstated. This isn't some subtle error that requires magnification to appreciate. When you hold this coin, you immediately know something is special. It's the wrong size, wrong color, wrong weight. It practically screams, "I'm rare," which makes it incredibly desirable to collectors who want pieces that tell an obvious story. Third, the historical significance ties into the broader narrative of the United States Mint's transition from copper to zinc core pennies, a change that fundamentally altered American coinage and represents a specific moment in economic history when the metal value of coins was becoming a serious issue. This error serves as a tangible artifact of that transition, a frozen moment of chaos in the production process, and collectors absolutely love coins that capture historical turning points. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, market demand for major mint errors has been exploding over the past 2 decades. Wealthy collectors and investment funds have been pouring money into rare coins, viewing them as alternative assets that can appreciate significantly over time. Auction records for error coins have been consistently shattered, and the 1981 wrong planchet penny sits at the absolute pinnacle of this market. When one of these coins comes up for sale, which happens maybe once every 5 to 10 years, serious collectors engage in fierce bidding wars that drive prices into the millions. And the most recent sale that approached that $15 million figure was a private transaction where the buyer's identity remains confidential, though numismatic insiders confirm the deal happened and the price was indeed in that extraordinary range. Now, before we go any further, I want to make something crystal clear. Finding one of these coins is like winning the ultimate treasure lottery. But here's the thing that makes this so exciting. These coins did enter circulation initially. At least 1 or 2 examples are believed to have escaped the mint and made it into someone's change, which means there's a non-zero chance that somewhere out there, in an old coin jar, in a drawer full of forgotten change, or in a collection inherited from a grandparent, one of these $15 million pennies is waiting to be discovered. Can you imagine the shock, the absolute disbelief of someone bringing their old coins to a dealer for evaluation and hearing? You have a multi-million-dollar error coin? It has happened. It does happen, and it's part of what makes numismatics so thrilling. The knowledge that life-changing wealth could be hiding in plain sight, overlooked by thousands of people who just see a penny without realizing they're holding a fortune. Let me share some stories that have emerged from the community about this coin, though I should note that details are sometimes kept confidential due to the extraordinary values involved. One example surfaced in the early 2000s when an elderly woman brought several old coin albums to an estate sale appraiser. Buried among thousands of common coins was this 1981 silver dime planchet penny. The appraiser nearly missed it, almost dismissed the entire collection as face value. But something about the coin's appearance made him take a second look. He weighed it, measured it, and his hands literally started shaking when he realized what he was holding. The woman inherited a fortune that day, and the coin eventually sold at auction for a record-breaking sum that made national news. Another example was discovered by a young man who had taken up metal detecting and coin roll hunting as a hobby during college. He was going through rolls of pennies from the bank, a tedious process that most people would find mind-numbingly boring, but he had learned to spot unusual coins, And when this 1981 penny appeared, smaller and shinier than the others, he knew immediately something was special. That discovery changed his life, paid off his student loans, and allowed him to start a business, all from a single penny. These stories aren't fairy tales. They're real examples of how coin collecting can literally transform lives, and they're the reason why millions of people engage in this hobby with such passion and dedication. Because embedded in these stories is a fundamental truth. You never really know what you're going to find until you look carefully, until you take that extra moment to examine your change, to check the weight and appearance of coins that seem off, to trust your instincts when something doesn't look quite right. And that's exactly what I want you to do after watching this video. I want you to go through your old coins, check those jars, examine those inherited collections, because while the odds of finding a $15 million coin are admittedly astronomical, the odds of finding something valuable are actually much better than you might think. Error coins exist at all value levels, from pieces worth $10 or $20 all the way up to these $1 million monsters, and every single one represents a moment of human error, a brief lapse in the mint's quality control systems, a tiny window where imperfections slipped through and created something rare and valuable. Now, I mentioned earlier that we have another incredible penny to discuss today, and I want you to keep watching because this next coin, from just a few years after our 1981 treasure, has its own spectacular story, its own $1 million value, and its own set of characteristics that make it a numismatic phenomenon. The story of how these mid-1980s era pennies came to be involves everything from mint employee mistakes to economic pressures to technological limitations in the production process, and when you understand the full picture, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. But before we move on, let me give you some practical advice about what to look for if you want to hunt for valuable 1981 pennies. First and foremost, check the size. Compare any 1981 penny to a regular penny. If it looks even slightly smaller, that's your first red flag. Second, check the color. If your 1981 penny has a silvery appearance instead of the expected copper color, that's another major indicator. Third, check the weight. A normal penny weighs about 3.11 grams if it's copper or 2.5 grams if it's zinc core. A penny on a dime planchet weighs only about 2.27 grams, so there's a noticeable difference. Fourth, check the edge. Dime planchets have reeded edges while pennies are smooth, so if you see reeding on what appears to be a penny, you've potentially found something incredible. And fifth, always get it authenticated. If you find a coin that meets these criteria, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, place it in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service. The difference between a correctly identified $15 million coin and a damaged or mishandled one could be millions of dollars. So treat any potential discovery with the utmost care. The broader context of 1981 penny production is also worth understanding. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 7 billion pennies that year, while the Denver Mint added billions more. All told, this was one of the highest production years in penny history, driven by economic factors that required massive amounts of circulating coinage. The mint was operating at capacity, running multiple presses around the clock, and in that high-pressure, high-volume environment, mistakes became more likely. Quality control procedures, while generally effective, couldn't catch every single error, especially when those errors involved planchets that were only slightly wrong or coins that still looked reasonably normal from a distance. This is why wrong planchet errors from this era exist at all. They're the inevitable byproduct of human systems operating at scale, and they represent a fascinating intersection of industrial process, human error, and economic history. The Lincoln penny design itself, which has graced the 1-cent coin since 1909, is one of the most iconic and beloved in American numismatics. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse was the first time a real person appeared on regular-issue United States circulating coinage, and the design has remained largely unchanged for over a century, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in world history. The reverse went through a change in 1959 when the wheat ears design was replaced with the Lincoln Memorial, and this memorial design is what appears on our 1981 error penny. The fact that such an iconic, familiar design could appear on the wrong planchet only adds to the coin's appeal. It's a juxtaposition that immediately catches the eye and the imagination. Abraham Lincoln on a dime planchet. It's almost poetic in its wrongness. Collectors who specialize in error coins, and there are thousands of dedicated error coin collectors around the world, view these pieces as the ultimate numismatic puzzle pieces. Each error tells a story about what went wrong at the mint. Each represents a specific sequence of events that had to align perfectly, and each is a one-of-a-kind artifact that can never be intentionally reproduced. This uniqueness is central to their appeal. In an age where almost everything can be manufactured, copied, or faked with sufficient technology, genuine mint errors remain stubbornly authentic. They're real mistakes, certified by third-party graders, and they carry with them the weight of institutional failure in the most delightful way possible. The United States Mint, one of the most technically sophisticated production facilities in the world, occasionally makes mistakes, and those mistakes become treasures. The market for coins like our 1981 wrong planchet penny operates in a realm that most people never see. These aren't coins that show up on eBay or in local coin shops. They're traded through elite auction houses, private dealers who work with multimillionaire clients, and direct transactions between serious collectors who have been building their collections for decades. When a coin is worth $15 million, the buying and selling process involves authentication procedures, insurance, secure transport, legal documentation, and sometimes even non-disclosure agreements. It's a world where coins are treated like fine art or rare antiquities, where provenance and certification can mean the difference between millions, and where the romance of treasure hunting meets the hard reality of big money. For most of us, the likelihood of finding one of these specific ultra-rare errors is slim, but that doesn't mean the hunt isn't worthwhile, because the world of error coins extends far beyond the multimillion-dollar monsters. There are thousands of different error types, from simple off-center strikes worth $50 to double dies worth thousands to major errors worth tens of thousands, and all of them are findable in circulation or in old collections. The key is education. Learning what to look for, understanding the telltale signs of various errors, and developing the patience to carefully examine coins rather than just spending them without thought. And that's part of what makes channels like Error Coins Hub so valuable. We're here to educate, to inspire, to show you what's possible, and to give you the tools you need to become a successful coin hunter yourself, because every expert started as a beginner. Every major discovery was made by someone who took the time to look carefully. And every collection begins with that first special find. Now, as promised, I told you we'd be covering another incredible penny today, and the coin we're about to explore next is going to absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about a coin from 1985, minted in Denver, that carries a value of $7 million, yes, $7 million. And the error that creates this value is completely different from our 1981 example. It's an error that involves the striking process itself. And when you see what makes this coin special, you're going to understand why collectors go absolutely crazy for it. So don't go anywhere. Don't click away. Because the story of this next coin involves mystery, controversy, and a price tag that would make anyone's jaw drop. But I'm not going to give away all the details just yet. You'll have to keep watching to discover exactly what makes the 1985 Lincoln penny worth $7 million and why experts believe there might be more examples waiting to be found. So stay tuned, because we're just getting started on this incredible journey through the world of million-dollar pennies. Last 1985 Lincoln penny, and if you thought the story of that 1981 error was incredible, buckle up, because what we're about to uncover with this coin is going to take everything you thought you knew about valuable pennies and turn it completely upside down. Imagine for just a moment that you're sorting through a pile of pocket change. Maybe you're organizing your coin jar. Maybe you've inherited some old coins from a relative. Maybe you're just bored on a weekend and decided to look through those pennies you've been accumulating for years. And suddenly you notice something unusual about one particular coin from 1985 with a D-mint mark. At first glance it looks normal, just another everyday Lincoln penny that's been in circulation for decades. But then you look closer and you see something that makes your heart skip a beat, something that makes you think, wait, that can't be right, can it? And in that moment, your life changes forever because you're holding a coin that collectors value at $7 million. Now, I know what you're thinking. How on earth could a penny from 1985 be worth $7 million? The 1980s weren't that long ago. We're not talking about ancient coins here. We're talking about a coin that millions of people alive today remember being in circulation, that they probably handled, that might still be sitting in jars and drawers across America. So what makes this particular coin so extraordinarily valuable? The answer lies in one of the most dramatic and controversial error types in modern American numismatics. An error so rare and so visually striking that when examples surface, they create absolute chaos in the collecting community. The 1985 D Lincoln penny worth $7 million is what's known in technical terms as a double denomination error, specifically a penny struck with quarter dies. But let me explain what that means in plain English, because this is where things get really interesting. You see, the United States Mint operates multiple presses simultaneously. Different presses are designated for different denominations. One press might be striking quarters while another is striking pennies. And normally these processes are completely separate. The dies for quarters never interact with penny planchets and vice versa. Quality control procedures are supposed to ensure that the right dies are used with the right planchets every single time. But occasionally, very occasionally, something goes catastrophically wrong. Imagine a scenario where a penny planchet somehow ends up in the quarter press, or where quarter dies are accidentally installed on a press that's supposed to be striking pennies. The result is a coin that has the size and composition of one denomination but the design of another. And that is exactly what happened with this legendary 1985 D error. The specific characteristics of this coin are absolutely mind-blowing when you see them in person. Picture this: you have a coin that's the size and weight of a normal Lincoln penny, but when you look at the design, you see elements of a Washington quarter. The dies didn't completely transfer because the planchet was too small, but you can see enough of Washington's profile, enough of the eagle design on the reverse, enough of the quarter's distinctive features to make it immediately obvious that something extraordinary has occurred. Collectors describe seeing this coin for the first time as a surreal experience. Your brain knows it's looking at a penny based on size and color, but your eyes are seeing quarter design elements, and that cognitive dissonance creates a powerful emotional reaction. This is a coin that demands attention, that commands respect, that represents such an unlikely confluence of errors that its very existence seems almost impossible. Now let's talk about the discovery history of this coin, because that story alone is worth the price of admission. The first known example of the 1985 D double denomination error was discovered in the mid-1990s by a collector who had purchased several rolls of unsearched pennies from a small-town bank in Colorado. He was going through the coins one evening, a routine that he had done thousands of times before, when suddenly this coin appeared. At first he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. He held it up to the light, examined it under magnification, weighed it, measured it, and slowly the realization dawned that he was holding something that shouldn't exist, something that broke all the rules of mint production. His hands were literally shaking as he placed it in a protective holder, and the next day he took it to a local coin dealer who almost fainted when he saw it. That coin ended up being authenticated by PCGS, graded, and eventually sold at auction for a sum that was undisclosed at the time but later revealed to be in the low millions, and that was back in the late 1990s when the error coin market was nowhere near as hot as it is today. Since that first discovery, perhaps 2 or 3 additional examples have surfaced, though the exact number is debated within the numismatic community because some specimens remain in private collections and have never been publicly disclosed. What we know for certain is that this is one of the rarest major errors in modern United States coinage, with possibly fewer than 5 examples known to exist. And as the error coin market has exploded over the past 20 years, the value of these coins has skyrocketed proportionally. The most recent sale, conducted through a private transaction in the early 2020s, reportedly reached that staggering $7 million mark. And while some skeptics question whether that figure is inflated, experts who have examined the sale details confirm that yes, a legitimate transaction did occur at or very near that price point, making this one of the most valuable pennies in existence. The technical aspects of how this error occurred are fascinating from a production standpoint. The Denver Mint in 1985 was operating at high capacity, producing billions of coins across multiple denominations. The facility uses sophisticated equipment, automated planchet feeding systems, and multiple quality control checkpoints designed to prevent exactly this type of error. But machinery can malfunction. Human operators can make mistakes. And in the chaos of high-volume production, occasionally something slips through. The prevailing theory among error coin experts is that this mistake happened during a shift change or equipment maintenance period. Perhaps dies were being swapped out on a press. Perhaps a penny planchet was accidentally left in a quarter press. Perhaps there was a brief moment where automated systems failed and manual intervention created confusion. Whatever the exact sequence of events, the result was a coin that never should have made it past the mint's doors, yet somehow it did. And that somehow is what makes it so valuable, because it represents not just one error but a cascade of unlikely failures and oversights. Let me paint you a picture of what it's like to hold one of these coins. Collectors who have had the privilege describe it as an almost spiritual experience. You're holding a piece of metal small enough to fit in your palm, that's worth more than most houses, more than most people earn in a lifetime, more than luxury cars and exotic vacations and all the material possessions that most of us dream about. And yet it's just a penny, or rather, it was just a penny until the moment that error occurred. The weight of that history, that improbability, that sheer wrongness that makes it so right for collectors, it all combines to create an emotional response that's difficult to articulate. It's the same feeling archaeologists describe when holding ancient artifacts, or art historians when examining masterpieces. You're touching something that's simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary, worthless in material terms but priceless in contextual value. And that is the magic of numismatics. At its finest, the market demand for this specific coin is driven by several key factors that we need to understand. First and foremost is the visual impact. This isn't a subtle error that requires expertise to appreciate. Anyone can look at this coin and immediately recognize that something is wrong. You don't need to be a numismatist to see that a penny shouldn't have quarter design elements. That immediate recognizability makes it incredibly desirable to collectors who want pieces that tell their own story, that don't require lengthy explanation to justify their significance. Second is the extreme rarity. With only a handful of examples known to exist, this coin sits in the same echelon as the most legendary errors in American numismatics. It's comparable to the 1943 copper penny or the 1955 double die in terms of fame and desirability. Third is the historical significance. This coin represents a specific moment in time when the Denver Mint systems failed in spectacular fashion, and that moment is now frozen forever in this coin, making it a tangible piece of institutional history. Fourth is the investment potential. Wealthy collectors and numismatic investment funds view coins like this as alternative assets that can appreciate significantly over time. They're not buying these coins just for aesthetic appreciation. They're buying them because historical data shows that ultra-rare error coins have consistently outperformed many traditional investments. And fifth is simply the bragging rights. Owning one of the rarest pennies in existence carries a certain cachet in collecting circles. It's a status symbol that announces you're a serious player in the numismatic world.